YouTube, your boy back once again with another sport topic. And today we're going to talk some basketball, Orlando Magic basketball. But today I got a special guest. Who we got today?
What's going on, man? Appreciate you having me. My name's Jonathan Osborne. I'm part of the Six-Man Show. We're a weekly Orlando Magic podcast. So I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a busy week, but I'm looking forward to the conversation for sure.
Yeah, good. I'm excited, man. I'm glad to have you on. So now, since it's been a week or so since what I like to call the trade day massacre, a couple games have passed by. How do you feel? Like, do you feel the exact same? Do you feel worse? Do you feel better about the trades? Like, how do you feel about it going forward?
So I don't know if you're a Game of Thrones fan, but we've been calling it the Red Wedding, just because I don't know if you remember that episode, but you're like, oh man, everything's going good, and then all of a sudden everybody's dead, and that's kinda,
right.
That's kind of how it felt. You know what I mean? Like, I would say I'm starting to feel better. I don't think I feel much better about the returns. I think I was okay with the returns. Nikola Vucevic for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr. and the two, first round picks. The only thing that was kind of weird for me with that is the fact that our front office at least felt like they had to put those protections on their picks in order to get the deal done, or Chicago was demanding that. And I think anytime you're the one giving up the all-star, you kind of have the leverage there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of strange to me. Now, realistically, it shouldn't really make a difference. The Bulls should be good enough that it shouldn't be an issue. They really shouldn't finish in the top four, at least not this season anyway. But the thing with Evan, and a lot of people are kind of upset about the return that we got for Evan Fournier, but Danny Ainge is one of the hardest negotiators in the league. As soon as he knew that the Magic were moving on from Vooch, he knew there was no way that the Magic were going to re-sign Evan. And at that point, you basically take anything that you can get. But the prize from that trade was really that $17 million traded player exception that the Celtics absorbed from the Gordon Hayward sign and trade in the previous offseason. So the Magic receiving that traded player exception, that's really the prize in that trade. Now, whether or not they're going to use that this season, who knows? I'm not convinced that they will. I certainly hope so, because at that point you really got Evan Fournier. Basically, you gave him away for nothing.
Right.
And then the Aaron Gordon trade, I think that was arguably the best return that we got. So
I think so too.
Gary Harris, by all accounts, when he's healthy, he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But that's the question with Gary Harris is, can he stay healthy? He's a guy that hasn't really played upwards of 50, 60 games in a few years here. It had a few great seasons in Denver, scoring like 18 points a game and then 16 points a game, signed that big extension with them, but hasn't really been able to stay healthy. And then RJ Hampton, who, right now, I think a lot of people, myself included, think that RJ Hampton might be, the best athlete on the roster. Aaron Gordon's gone, obviously, but just the speed, the quickness, the agility, his leaping ability, I think RJ might be the best athlete on the roster. And then again, you have, a pick, I believe, that I forget exactly what the protections are on that 2025 pick from Denver. But
I believe that one's unprotected.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. But again, that's a pick that you're not going to see for a few years. So no telling where the Magic are going to be, 4 years from now. No telling where the Nuggets are going to be 4 years from now. So I think that might be one of those things where over the next couple of years, as this team starts to progress and develop a little bit, you might have a couple of guys, you might kind of have a log jam. Like right now, we have a lot of guards now. You've got Markelle Fultz, you've got Cole Anthony, now you've got RJ Hampton, you've got Gary Harris. Depending on where this draft pick ends up, you might have a guy like Cade Cunningham, who's ball dominant, or Jalen Green, who's ball dominant. And then you're going to have kind of the situation that we had with our forwards a few years ago, where you have so many forwards, you don't really know what to do with them all. I could see eventually perhaps packaging a guy or two with like our, 2023, 2024 pick, maybe the Denver pick, if the next all-star becomes available. I'm not saying Bradley Beal, but he's kind of the guy that people have floated around for the last year. So if he gets disgruntled in Washington, he might be the next guy that tries to force his way out. Still a few years away. I don't think it will be Bradley Beal, but Bradley Beal, Anthony Davis, that type of guy who wants to force their way out. So maybe they keep that pick in their back pocket. For me, most of the sadness just comes from moving Vooch unexpectedly. Evan, a lot of people weren't a fan of Evan. I was a fan of Evan, especially the person. I would say more so than the basketball player. Hell of a basketball player, but I think he was a great guy. I think he was great for the locker room. And then Aaron Gordon, obviously, a lot of us thought that he was going to end up being an all-star at some point. That never happened. But I think that's where most of the emotion for me came from. But I'm definitely feeling better about the deals now. How about you?
I actually feel the same that I felt during when it happened. To be honest, I think that it was about time. I just think. See, my thing is this: going to the season, my favorite player on the team happened to been Aaron Gordon, so that was the one I really didn't want us to trade. But you hear the rumblings for the past like 2.5 years. When we got to this season, I kind of just accepted it that we were going to eventually move on from AG. So that was the one that I was really trying to fight like tooth and nail, like, no, don't get rid of AG. But because, like I said, that it's basically been in your ear, you've been hearing rumblings here and rumblings there for the past year and a half, 2 years. I kind of figured that was going to happen. And like I said, I think that it was we were hitting our head on side the wall, and I think this team, as previously constructed, was basically they basically reached their ceiling, and I believe that this regime. This is their plan all along. I think that the moment when they got here, because when we make these trades outside of Terrence Ross, there's nobody left from the previous regime. Drafted, signed, traded for, brought in on the no outside Terrence Ross. No one else is from the previous regime. This is all new blood brought in, and I think this is the plan going forward. I think when you drafted Jonathan Isaac, and right after that, you had AG go have the game had the game of his life against the Nets when he scores 40 points and was if I'm not mistaken, I think he was 100% shooting threes in that game. Then you had 2 games later, Vooch do the same thing against the Brooklyn Nets. I think he had 41. It was a career high, and then it kind of fell off. But maybe we can build with this. And then the following year, Vooch gets his first All-Star. You make the playoffs. You win a playoff game against Toronto. You think, okay, maybe we traded for Markelle Fultz, that maybe we could actually build something. I think once we got to the game against the Bucks, the series against the Bucks, I think that they realized that this might not go anywhere. And then you start off the season hot, starting off 4-0, first time in franchise history, win 4 straight games, and then the injury bug hits. Markelle goes down. AG misses time. Fournier misses time. Cole misses time. Everybody started missing time. And I think the wake up call was that Friday night game against the Rockets when you lost by 20 points. I think that right there was like, you know what? This is going to be a lost season. This might be the time to just go ahead, hit reset. We have our building blocks with Isaac and Fultz. We take Vooch, we take Fournier, we take AG, and we get whatever we can get for these guys and try to move forward and build it. I think that's what's the plan.
Well, first of all, I would actually argue that Bucks series last year, I think the Magic had a pretty good chance in that. Even if, Aaron Gordon and Michael Carter-Williams are healthy in that series, I really feel like we had a chance in that series. I'm fully convinced if you have AG, Michael Carter-Williams, a healthy Jonathan Isaac, the way that he was playing in those first few games before the ACL tear, if that's our squad going into that series, I'll put my hand on the Bible right now. I'm fully convinced that we win that series. Steve Clifford had enough time to prepare for Giannis, and I really think he kind of put the blueprint together for in the playoffs. This is how you need to guard these guys. This is how you need to play. And Gary Clark Jr. got really hot that first game, hit a few threes. That kind of helped us get us over the hump for the Milwaukee Bucks, and he wasn't really able to put together a full game again in that series, but again, if we've got Jonathan Isaac the way that he was playing, Aaron Gordon, Michael Carter-Williams, I really feel like the Magic, from a matchup perspective, that's what the playoffs is all about. After all, it's about matchups. Right. But I think I really think they had a chance against the Bucks in that series, but we'll never know. But yeah, I mean, I think really, on our podcast right after Markelle Fultz tore his ACL, we said the future of the Magic just changed, and we were really talking about long term, right? Like if Markelle, ACL injuries are not what they once were.
Right.
But, with the injury bug, you just never know what's going to happen. But we didn't know that was really going to change the future drastically in the short term. We knew that we were going to get worse. But I think if you look at this season, I think the Markelle Fultz injury directly led to the moves that were made last week. I think
I believe that too.
If you have Markelle Fultz, you have somebody to really orchestrate and organize the offense. That's what we've been lacking this entire season since Markelle Fultz went down, is a real point guard. Started to have it a little bit with Cole. He's injured. You brought Frank Mason Jr. in. He gets injured. You waive him. You bring Chasson Randle in. Chasson Randle hasn't been very good. I think we can all agree on that. But I think if Markelle Fultz does not get injured, these moves are not made. Now, I've been talking since November, December that this was the year that you move AG at the trade deadline. Evan Fournier was on a expiring deal, so you get what you can get for him at the trade deadline. So I really expected those guys to be gone regardless. But the Vooch move was really, really surprising. But you bring in a lot of young guys. You bring in veterans like Otto Porter Jr., who I don't expect him to be here next year. He's getting paid pretty handsomely right now. He expires after this season, but I think he'll probably go somewhere else and try to get a similar pay to what he's getting now. I don't know if he's quite that caliber of a player to be in the upper 20s, but maybe somewhere around 20 million or so. Personally, I wouldn't want the Magic to do that deal. I think they're still pretty far away before they need to start really investing in veterans like that. But you look at a guy like Gary Harris, Wendell Carter Jr., RJ Hampton, all of the picks that we acquired. And typically when you're starting a rebuild, you're starting from nothing. We're starting a rebuild. We've got Markelle Fultz. We've got Jonathan Isaac, who I would say upwards of 90% of the fan base is really confident in those guys and is excited by their potential. And especially when you look at Jonathan Isaac before he had the initial knee injury last year, New Year's Day in Washington, everybody around the league was talking about this kid being a defensive player of the year candidate, not first team all defense, not second team all defense. It was him. It was Anthony Davis as the defensive player of the year candidates going into the start of 2020 last year. And then again, New Year's Day, he has the knee injury, comes back in the bubble, plays, I think it was 3 or 4 games, tears the ACL, but you've got Markelle, you've got J.I. Chuma has been playing out of his mind.
Wow. Crazy.
I've been high on Chuma. We've been waiting for him to come back. Obviously, this July will be 2 years since we drafted him. We had to wait that first year for him. But I'm sold on Chuma. Like, I think we are confirmed that we have 3 guys that we can go to war with in Markelle, J.I., Chuma. The rest of the guys, I think we're still waiting to figure it out. Cole, I think, showed a lot of signs before the rib injury. He was starting to play a lot better. Obviously, he had the huge game winner against Minnesota that boosted his confidence. But then Wendell Carter Jr. showed me a lot last night. We're recording this on Thursday, so last night they just beat the Clippers. He showed me a lot down the stretch closing that game. He showed a lot of poise, made some clutch defensive plays. Mo Bamba is a guy that I'm still high on. I understand people's concerns. I definitely do. But I think even when you look at the roster that we currently have with Kem Birch, Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Bamba is probably the worst player out of the 3 of those guys right now. I think Kem and Wendell have the ability to just be more consistent and more solid. But I don't think you can argue the fact that Mo can just do things that not many guys can do. When you talk about a guy 7 foot tall, I think he has like a 7'9" wingspan to be able to be enough of a shooting threat to pump fake, drive past his defender, and dunk over the top of guys. He can reach to block shots that other guys just can't get to. When you start talking about his potential as a lob threat as well, I just think he has a much higher ceiling than those other guys. So I think it's too early to give up on him. But again, another guy like RJ Hampton, just so many guys that we have now. This isn't what your typical rebuild looks like day one.
Right.
You're trying to build, and we already have a hell of a foundation to build on. So although it's going to take a couple of years to get back to where we were, and the hope is that you surpass that. That's why you made these moves. But I'm really encouraged and I'm really excited for the future.
Yeah, I am too. And this is why I believe, like, we're in a way better situation this go around than we were when we dumped Dwight Howard to LA. We're in a much better situation. We actually have a foundation, and we actually have legitimate building blocks instead of just throwing stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. Like, we have an actual foundation, actually building blocks between Isaac and Fultz. And I agree, and I do believe I believe that all the guys you just named, the biggest question mark is Mo, and it's not because of his ability. To me, it's just that he's not on the court. If Mo gets on the court, I just want to see what he can do. I think a lot of his, he just has a lot of inexperience. He doesn't get a lot of playing time even when he's healthy. I need to see more Mo because I need to see exactly what do you have in him, because he's like the biggest question mark. I don't know he has him. Wendell, I'm a Duke fan, and Wendell has impressed me more in the last 2 games than his whole career, Duke. Like I was not impressed. I Wendell I was not high on Wendell coming out. So seeing when we trade for him, like, okay, good, he's a good depth guy. But the last 2 games, now I know it's a small sample size. Maybe he's hungry. Maybe sometimes being in a situation like this when you get traded, you find this disrespectful, and now it lights a fire up on you, and maybe that's what it is. Hopefully, maybe we can get something out of them. But what we've seen the last two games is I really like you said, Chuma has been on fire. I am convinced that I've been okay. We got Markelle, we have Isaac. We're gonna be searching for that third guy. I don't think we have to really search too far for that third guy because we might already have him here. I'm extremely impressed with Chuma. I was high on RJ Hampton. I actually wanted us to draft RJ Hampton in the draft when we ended up taking Cole. Now I like Cole a lot, so I'm even happy that we have RJ. And like what you said earlier, now we have a log jam at the guard position when a year and a half ago it was a log jam at the forward position. And we didn't have any guards. Now we got too many guards. So it's trying to see who's it's going to be like musical chairs. Who's going to get the starting two? I mean, more likely you got Markelle penciled in as either the one or the two guard. The other guard, you don't know who's going to take that spot, and then don't know exactly who's going to come in the draft. If you end up with the first pick, if you end up with a top 4 pick or whatever, who you end up drafting is going to also have a lot to say about going forward. I believe that the future is bright. I mean, I think if we're the youngest team in the NBA with an average of 22 and a half, I think that's our average.
I definitely think we are. I don't know the exact number, but I have heard that recently that now we're the youngest team in the league.
Yeah, and we have talent. It's not like, oh, we're just a young team full of scrubs. We got guys, and think about this. You're potentially going to have a potential starting 5 of nothing but lottery picks, high lottery picks at that, and multiple guys in the same draft. Like, I mean, you got Isaac and Fultz in the same draft. I know Hampton and Cole won lottery picks, but both of them in the same draft. You're going to have 2 first-round picks in this coming up draft. So we're going to have a lot of volume of picks, kind of similar to – not saying that not comparing these guys to the situation, but when I'm talking about the youth standpoint, what Oklahoma had when KD, James Harden, and Westbrook, what the Magic originally had when you drafted Nick Anderson in '89, and then you turn around, you drafted 3D in '91, you drafted Shaq in '92, and then you traded for Penny in '93. Like, all those guys around the same age. Not comparing these guys to those talents, just saying you have all these young guys, high draft picks around the same age, able to grow with each other. I think it's something that it's very exciting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, I believe Markelle and Jonathan Isaac were in the same draft as well in 2017. So
yes,
it's like we've got a trio of that, of guys being drafted in the same class. But yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I do think, again, it was hard to get over, Vooch being moved and everything like that. We put tributes together for each one of those guys that was, around for a long time, for Aaron, for Evan, for Vooch. So not only did we want to just thank those guys, but it was really kind of cathartic for me to just kind of go through and explore the emotions that I was having and the elements of sadness that I was having, and just be able to kind of like put that to pen to paper and then record that. And we put a video together. So, that kind of helped me deal with some of that sadness. But now I'm just really excited. I mean, you look at a game last night against the Clippers where we come out, we're down 10-0. We're down double digits in the first half. They come back. I believe they were down 3 going into the fourth quarter. They end up, taking the lead. I think with like 3 minutes to go, something like that, they had like a 3% chance of winning that game. And then you come back, guys make big plays down the stretch, and you win that game. A lot of people are it's very early, but I do see the parallels between this team and the Heart and Hustle team. If you look at the veterans on this team now, like Michael Carter-Williams, James Ennis, Kem Birch, those are all high energy role players, guys that play with a lot of heart and a lot of hustle, to put it that way. And that Heart and Hustle team, ended up being 41-41. So we think back, you're wearing the shirt right there of the 18-19 season, how good that team was at the end of the season. They only went 42-40. It's hard to go 41-41 in the league, especially with guys who, you're penciled in to lose most nights,
Right.
Still too early to say this is Heart and Hustle 2.0, but I wouldn't be surprised if a month and a half from now, that's how we're referring to these guys. Steve Clifford, a lot of people have questioned whether or not he's the right coach for the rebuild. And I think some of those questions are valid, especially when we talk about a guy like Mo Bamba, who so many of us have wanted to see him on the floor this year. And his thing is, you're going to earn every minute of playing time, whether it's detrimental to a player's development or not is up for debate. a lot of people think that making a guy fight for playing time is actually better for his development. What Steve Clifford is not going to do is put guys in positions for them to fail, because then you're creating bad habits and things that can hamper you and hamper your development for the rest of your career. So, you heard him after the Lakers game the other night. There was no, moral victories. There wasn't any feel good to that post-game press conference. He came out and said, these guys are making high school level mistakes at this level. That's just not acceptable. And if we're going to win, we need to do X, Y, and Z every night. It's not going to be our offense. It's going to be defense. It's going to be rebounding. It's going to be not turning the ball over. It's going to be all of the attention to detail things. So from that aspect, I do think Clifford is the right type of coach for the rebuild. But yeah, man, I'm right there with you. The future is definitely bright.
Well, see, Clifford, he comes from under the Van Gundy line of thinking. If you know anything about the Van Gundys, they're no nonsense type guys. So that whole gonna fight for playing time, like that comes from. I mean, that comes from them. I mean, we had a Van Gundy right here in Orlando, basically staying toe-to-toe with a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, with 8-time All-Star caliber player, guy who's leading the league to leading you to the finals. I think he finished second in the MVP race that year. And hey, I don't care. Like I'm still running this team. So you have that type of mindset.
Drinking his Diet Pepsi.
Exactly. So that's the type of mindset that Steve Clifford comes from. And to be honest, it was kind of hard for not to say he was in a lose-lose situation, but it's kind of hard for Mo Bamba to get playing time when you're behind Vooch, and Vooch is. And then Vooch is going into the twilight of his career when he's actually like, in the beginning, he was a walking double-double. He gets you 12 a night and 11 boards, but now he's out here being efficient, getting 23, 24 a night, and also getting 12, 13 rebounds. It's kind of hard to get playing time because you're not about to pull Vooch. You're not about to pull Vooch, and he's getting the All-Star games. You're not about to pull him. So even though I've been wanting Mo Bamba to get more time, but it's really like, where's he going to get it?
Right.
So Now that Vooch is gone, now I guess you could say that roadblock is out the way. Now this opens up the door to get more Vooch. Now that AG's gone and that Isaac is hurt for the rest of the season, that opens up the door, like we've seen, for Okeke to get more time, to get more playing time. We're going to see exactly what happens when Cole comes back and how they're going to do things with Cole Anthony and RJ Hampton. See how this time and how these guys' development goes on going forward. I'm excited to see these last, I think it's 26, 25 games, something like that.
Something around there. It's been such a crazy week. This is like the 4th podcast now that I've recorded in the last 7 days. Another one right after this. So it's just been like so much of the attention and the talk has been surrounding not only what was going out, but what we're bringing in. And now those guys are all trying to get used to each other. And we're like, wait, who's on the roster? Who's starting tonight? Who's playing? Like there's a lot going on right now. But yeah, it's somewhere around there, like 24 to 26 games left. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty interesting to see how the rest of the season ends up. I mean, a lot of people were upset about the win last night, which is just all, like, I get it, but I can't sit down and watch the team and root for them to lose, in the moment. But losing is going to be a big part of where you end up in the draft lottery, coming in June. So obviously you're hoping for that number 1 pick, so you can have your choice of whatever you want to do. If you don't believe in the guy that a lot of people say is number 1, then maybe you trade back. I don't really know, but yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out.
I still think that, and who knows, maybe Okeke does turn to this guy. Something that the Magic have needed. I believe they need this the moment since they trade Trace McGrady to Houston. They need a legitimate, bona fide scorer, a guy who gets it, who gets you 20 to 25 every night, pulling up, getting 30 every night. That guy is unquestioned. He's going to get his shots off, and he's going to put up points. I think you might have that opportunity in this draft with Cunningham, with possibly Jalen Green. I think you have that potentially, and I think that is very enticing. That gets your eyes going a little bit, because that's something that we need, especially from the guard position. I know pre-draft, Markelle was believed to be that type of guy. We know the shoulder injury happened, and I don't believe he's that guy anymore. He might be a decent scorer, but I don't think he's a 25 a night guy. And the way Kiki's been playing, he could possibly be that type of guy because he's been playing on fire. Now we're gonna see if this is just lightning in the bottle or if this is something that he can sustain throughout the rest of his career. That would remain to be seen. But I think that's what the Magic are searching for, because that's, even though we went to the finals with Dwight and Dwight was the Defensive Player of the Year, and even though we've seen what Vooch has done for the past couple of years, it's different when you have that guard position being that, not even that guard position, just that position being that bona fide, unstoppable scorer. And that's something that I think that this organization needs.
Well, the funny thing is, Tracy McGrady obviously kind of forced his way out of the door. And then that summer we draft Dwight Howard. So it's like, T-Mac, you hold on just a little bit longer here. And then if we're talking about, obviously, injuries took a toll on T-Mac, especially as we got into the later portion of the first decade in the 2010s and everything. But you put Tracy McGrady with Dwight Howard, potentially Hito Turkoglu, Jameer Nelson. I don't know if the Rashard Lewis deal ever ends up happening at that point. But you put Tracy McGrady with Dwight Howard, we're talking about an all-time, what if. Maybe we're not talking about Shaq and Penny as being that dynamic duo in Orlando Magic history. We might be talking about T-Mac and Dwight Howard. Those guys were that good in their primes. So
I don't know why you do this to me. Why you do it to me? Why?
we did during the the quarantine when the pandemic first started last year. We did a whole episode on Orlando Magic what ifs, and that's probably the most depressing preparation that I've ever done for a podcast, because literally, if you look at Orlando Magic history, it is nothing but what ifs.
What ifs? Yes, so, like if Grant Hill doesn't get hurt, if
Duncan signs with the Magic.
Thank you. That's the Duncan. If Shaq never leaves, it's if they pull the trigger on Chris Paul, like it's.
Yeah, I mean there is another what if that I found doing that I never even heard of, and it was Shaq called Horace Grant, while he was trying to make this decision on, do I go to LA, do I stay in Orlando? And then Horace Grant really believes that had he picked up that phone, that he could have got Shaq to stay in Orlando. So that's another one that you can add to the list. But when we talk about Markelle, I mean, in regards of his playmaking ability, I don't believe there's anybody in the league that's going to stop that kid from getting to the paint on a consistent basis. If he picks a spot on the floor and says that's where I want to go, he's going to find his way to get there. He's just that unorthodox, dribble sequence that he has, the herky jerkiness, he's going to get where he wants to go. Now, again, the playmaking and the passing of his is elite. It all comes down to the jump shot. Is he going to be able to get the jump shot back? I don't know. It's hard for me to say. Most in me probably tells me no, but 2-3 years ago, we thought that kid forgot how to shoot a basketball and was never going to be able to shoot again. So he's come so far. Right now he's like in the low 20s. If he can get into the low to mid 30s and can at least make guys think about closing out on him, I think that's going to open up his game a whole lot. Okeke, is he going to become like a 25, point scorer a night? I don't know. I don't know if he has that in him. He might. But I think the guys that you mentioned, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green is a guy that I've been high on for months now. Really, the first clips I saw of him, I was like, that's what the Magic need. Like that dynamic ability to create space and hit jump shots from the perimeter. Almost like a James Harden, something like that. Like he's got that type of bag, if you will. But now that it looks like we're going to have a potential to fall into the bottom three and have a pretty good chance of getting the first pick, everyone's saying that Cade Cunningham is the guy. There are certain concerns that I have with Cade as far as like his willingness to be the alpha and take over. I think we saw a lack of that at Oklahoma State. But when the lights were the brightest, when there was the most pressure, when his team needed him to make a play, he almost always made the play. So I think you have to respect that. But I think one of those two guys has the potential to really come in and be like, I'm the guy now. Like we've got some great pieces here. I think Jonathan Isaac has a whole nother level to get to offensively, but he's going to be a defensive player of the year candidate for years to come as long as he can stay healthy. But yeah, this core that we're talking about, and you're talking about adding, potentially 2 lottery picks this year. We still have the Bulls pick. I think the Bulls are probably going to play themselves out of the lottery. I think when Vooch and Levine really figure things out and Billy Donovan, tweak some things defensively, I think Daniel Tice is a really good addition for them. He's probably the best backup center in the entire league right now. I think this team has the potential to be really, really good, really, really quickly.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Isaac, like the piggyback what you said earlier, I think that's another reason why like they went ahead and said, like, you know what, this is the time to pull the trigger. Because if I mean, I know this is another what if, but if Isaac doesn't get hurt on New Year's Day, and I believe there's not a pandemic and the season finishes out normally last year, without question, I believe Jonathan Isaac is the defensive player of the year, and I actually believe that Markelle Fultz is either the guy who wins the award or is like the runner up to most improved player. Because both of them, especially right before the season was suspended, before they went to the bubble, I think that last 10-game stretch, Markelle Fultz was on fire and he was dominant. I live in Texas, and I was at one of the last games against the Rockets, and just watching the way he played, and this was against a James Harden and a Westbrook fully loaded Rockets team. They could not handle Markelle. They could not handle Markelle. They couldn't handle Vooch, but Markelle was out there making them look like fools out there in the Toyota Center, and I'm like, okay. We might actually have something in this kid. Like I said, like we thought that he forgot how to pick up a basketball. Like we thought that he just had no business putting on the NBA jersey ever again. And he's fought his way back from that. Like, can he fight his way back? I think he could at the very least be a all-star type of player to get to a couple all-stars in his career. I don't know exactly if he could be the best player on a championship team, but I do think he could be a very strong piece. Like you said, his playmaking ability is I don't want to say second to none, but his playmaking ability is elite. And I believe that Jonathan Isaac can be a dominant defensive player in the NBA. Like not just win defensive player of the year a couple times. I think he could be a dominant defensive player of this league because the whole dynamic of the team changes defensively when number one is out there. Like the whole dynamic just changes when Isaac is out there, and I believe that's the reason why they say, okay, this is the two guys that we want to build around, and we can see if we can find the scorer or whatever the case may be, and we'll just hit the ground running with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't have a ton of time here, unfortunately, but yeah, I remember, especially I think it was like the last 4 games before the shutdown last year. Evan Fournier went out, he sprained his elbow, and then all of a sudden the Magic's offense just took off, and so many people were like, oh, look how much better we are with Evan, which I didn't totally buy into that narrative, but it was largely because Markelle Fultz was, like you said, he was on fire.
Yeah.
Now, if Jonathan Isaac misses, he doesn't come back for the bubble, doesn't tear his ACL, and maybe he comes back this year and the knee is totally healthy, I'm right there with you. Again, each year, he's going to be a defensive player of the year candidate. Like you said, he is that good. 2018, 2019, especially that last 31 games of the season where we were basically, top 5, if not the best defensive team in the league, it was largely in part to Jonathan Isaac. And I thought that you saw that last year, especially when he went out. The defense of this team never reached that level that they did at the second half of the 2018-2019 season, where they were smothering teams. Teams could not breathe, like you said, when number one was on the floor. So you don't have to convince me when it comes to Markelle and J.I. With Markelle, it's all going to come down to the jump shot.
Right. It really is. And same thing with Isaac is going to come down to, can Isaac stay healthy? Like that's going to be the one hang up about Isaac is, can he stay healthy? Because like you say, defensively, he's a monster. Defensively, it's just, can he stay healthy?
Right.
Yeah. But man, I appreciate having you on today, man.
My pleasure, man. I wish I had more time, but yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much, man.
All right. Thank you, man.